Hi, welcome to this presentation on Rethinking Feedback, hosted by KeySet. My name is Jen Gomez, and I'm a current high school history teacher. And so a couple of things about feedback before we get started. The first one is crafting quality feedback is actually going to take the teacher a little bit of time and effort. It is important, it takes more time to create quality feedback than perhaps just, underlying things that are wrong or putting check marks on a paper. The lesson that I'm going to take you through is a lesson that I give to my students at the beginning of the school year. I typically teach students how to take quality notes by following a formal outline format. And so just knowing that lesson so well, I can tell just ahead of time what parts of the lesson my students might struggle with. So even though I might pre-teach a lot of that lesson, there might be some things even at the end of this formative assessment that my students might need. So the first thing to consider when giving quality feedback is to focus feedback on the task and not on the learner. So the subject of this feedback needs to be kind of taken away from the learner and the learner's self-esteem and all of those emotions that are kind of built in on that. And that can raise the affective filter of students inside of a classroom. And so these just take, for example, these two different feedback types. So the first one is, you have included a lot of important information in these notes, but your format does not follow the format discussed in class. Versus, these notes have a lot of important information, but there are some errors in format. The first one, just by the subject being the learner themselves, can feel like a personal attack. And the second way of delivering that feedback just has a much more objective feeling to it. And the learner might be more willing to listen to the feedback that's delivered in such a fashion. The second suggestion is to make sure it's clear to the learner where they are, like what have they done well and what are they still working on. It's important that the learner understands exactly where they are in that learning process. So back to the same sentence. So these notes have a lot of important information. That's where the learner is. They've done this well. I'm not concerned about this part of the notes, but there are some errors in format. Okay, now I understand. I've got some problems with format that I need to go back and look at again. If possible, now I will tell you right now that the research is about 50-50 on this. So if possible, it's important for me, at least in my classroom, to keep the responsibility of meeting the goals of the lesson on the learner. And this can change very dramatically. It depends on where your learners really are, the amount of instruction that has been provided to them ahead of time, and just the amount of mental workload that the learner is willing to put into the process. And so if possible, I would like my students to, receive the credit and kind of the feelings that go along with figuring it out on their own. So this is the next part of my feedback. Please go back and review the format for a formal outline again. When you discover how this outline does not follow this format, let me know by adding a comment to this thread. So again, I'm not telling them exactly where they've gone wrong, but I'm really confident in all of the materials that I provided to them ahead of time that they're able to go back and identify where their error was. Next, it's important to restate or clarify the goal of the task. Sometimes that goal might have changed. Where my original goal was that they were going to do this well the first time, my new goal might look a little bit different. And so it's important for me to communicate to my student what it will look like when that goal has been met. So you will have met all goals of this task once you have identified what should be different about the format of this outline. So hey, once you do this, I'm going to say that you've met the goals. And again, this being a formative assessment, I'm confident that we can work through that process. And again, finally, with feedback, and especially right now, if possible, use technology. Technology is really great. You can use technology to embed micro reteaching lessons. For example, I might include this line at the end of my feedback. A hint: if you're still having difficulty figuring out what needs to be fixed, please watch this video. And that video might be a reteaching lesson of me going over the components of a formal outline again. So altogether, this is what the feedback might sound like for my student on this particular assignment. These notes have a lot of good information, but there are some errors in format. Please go back and review the format for a formal outline again. When you discover how this outline does not follow the format, let me know by adding a comment to this thread. You will have met all goals of this task once you have identified what should be different about the format of this outline. Hint: if you're having trouble figuring out what needs to be fixed, you can watch this video. And then I would include, of course, an amazing YouTube video of me reteaching. It's important for me always to conduct things in my classroom that are research-based, or to use things in my classroom that are research-based. So if you're interested in this topic and finding out how other scholars view this topic, here's the supporting research that was used in this presentation. As always, I cannot make these slideshows on my own. I do definitely have to credit Slides Carnival and then the photographs by Unsplash.